Welcome to another edition of Coastline, and we are going to be talking about the future of Beaufort County today with Rob Merchant. He is the Director of Planning and Zoning here for Beaufort County, and my goodness, you're about ready to take a vacation, I think, because you've just completed this 200-page booklet on the 2040 Comprehensive Plan, and I've got to say right off the bat, this is an amazing piece of work you and your staff and all your volunteers have come up with. It takes a look at the projections for this county, and I guess this is a state-mandated document, but it has certainly been one that has obviously shown a lot of thought and sweat equity put into it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about the comprehensive plan because this is a subject very near and dear to me. When I've been asked about what is a comprehensive plan, essentially it is, I would say, a very detailed vision statement. And I look at Beaufort County, and we have a lot of diversity. We don't agree on everything. But I think that if you pulled a group of people, cross-section of Beaufort County, you would find that they all love our county. They really treasure this place. And, one of the things a comprehensive plan is meant to do is to identify what it is that we treasure about our county. And I think that you would find common themes. We love the natural environment. We love its history. We like the way of life here. We would all agree on there's things that we could improve about the county. And really what the comprehensive plan is supposed to do is look at those things, the things we treasure, and in light of an ever-changing environment, what actions, what policies do we need to make to kind of chart our way into the future?
Well, it was nice to see that in a county whose population is almost or exceeding 200,000, that you were able to secure 1,400 people. And you and I were speaking before we started taping that oftentimes when you are seeking input from people on a document and a plan like this, you tend to get a lot of people that have free time on their hands. They're either retired or they're not your day-to-day working people who are trying to raise a family. And so it's nice to see that you went beyond the bounds of just one segment of this society and purposed to reach out to various local communities within Beaufort County in going through a wide swath of demographics.
Yes, and I would say that, we had the added challenge this time with the pandemic. We literally kicked off this process in March of 2020, 2 weeks prior to everything shutting down. And so over the summer and fall of 2020, we were able to work with our consultant design workshop to do a series of online engagements. And we got really good inputs and a lot of, if you look at raw numbers, a lot of input, from residents. But we realized that it really didn't represent a cross-section of Beaufort County. And so we made an effort in the fall, even though it was the height of, the pandemic. Yeah. We had a series of workshops in the communities that were more of an open house format, so that people could drop in. We wouldn't have large numbers at any one time. And then also, even after we had a draft plan ready in April of 2021, we realized that we still needed to go out in the community, and so we kind of changed course and had another series of meetings. But, we definitely want to make sure that we're addressing the needs of all residents.
Yeah, according to the document, you went to about 50 locales, and then you had actually 12 different ways of communicating this information to the public. So I think you've done your due diligence, and you're now at the point where I guess County Council will be presented this report and will be asked to vote on it. There will be 3 readings, and then hopefully they'll go ahead and accept it as it has been submitted, right?
Well, that's our hope.
Yeah, okay, good deal. Well, let's talk about this because As I looked it over, I saw that there were really three main themes that you outlined, and that the document actually interfaces with two other documents. So let's first talk about how this Beaufort County Comprehensive Plan, which you've called Envision Beaufort County, and it's looking ahead for the next 20 years at what you have identified as necessary to maintain certain desired goals within the county, what is going to have to take place. The two other documents that interface with this are the Beaufort County Atlas and the Beaufort County Greenscape?
Greenprint.
Greenprint, okay. Tell me about those other documents and how they work with this one.
Okay, well, a typical comprehensive plan, you have the background information. So, whether the chapters on natural resources, you'll have a lot of background data and numbers and charts, and then that leads to a set of recommendations. What we've attempted to do this time, because our existing plan, which was adopted in 2010, is very thick. It's a very large document, and we really wanted to make this a lot easier to read, just for the decision makers and also for the general public. So we have, rather than having all that information in one document, we've taken all the background information and we call it the Beaufort County Atlas. And so it's presented in a way, hopefully, that is fun to read, with a lot of charts and pictures and, in a way presenting, the natural environment, the culture of the area, the history, all of that in one document. So when you get to the actual plan itself, each chapter starts with a summary, which, backgrounds or I think we call it context, where we have, a page summarizing this is what the data says, let's say about natural resources. Therefore, we recommend the following, policies and actions. So it takes all that's in the Atlas, summarizes, and immediately launches into the recommendations, which we're hoping will make it a much easier, if you want to read what the issues are with natural resources, you get a good summary just with that, that synopsis.
Do you anticipate this comprehensive plan would be, for lack of a better word, Beaufort County's Bible, what they will kind of use as their guide going forward?
Well, I guess I hesitate because we look at a comprehensive plan as a living document. We recognize that in no point in time do we have clear vision, to look 20 years in the future. But we hope that it could be a framework, that for decision making, that it outlines actions and projects that we need to kind of reckon with, and we may change, there are always circumstances where we change course, but we're kind of looking at it in the context of the plan.
Yeah, that was one of the thoughts that occurred to me is, so you have, a council right now and a variety of staff members that, are going to give their imprimatur on this. And what happens, say, 5 years down the road when you've got a totally different council, perhaps, and you can now say, I've done my job, I'm going to retire, and somebody else comes in and takes your spot and has a different viewpoint on, where we should go. Is that at risk of changing this, or is the fact that you have dealt with 1,400 people in this county who said, this is how we see Beaufort going forward, and it's going to pretty much stay that way with just minor tweaks?
Well, I think that the document, obviously, comprehensive plans are not set in stone over the next 10 years, and they could be amended. But you have in writing, what you believe are the salient issues and policies that the county should take. And so if you do have a change of personnel or a change of council, you still have the comprehensive plan in place. And if it is their wish that, conditions have changed and we want to, really focus on growing in this area we said we were going to preserve, or something radically different, it requires a public process to do that. So it's the comprehensive planning process in and of itself is kind of set up to be very transparent with the public.
So just as the passing of this document major amendments to it would probably require a public hearing then?
Yes.
I got you.
Yeah.
Okay, terrific. Now, I said this thing is divided into three major themes. The themes are resilience, equity, and uniqueness to place. Talk to me about those three themes.
Okay. Well, these really, these issues are not new to Beaufort County, but I think that one of the things that we looked at is what are things that we want to focus on over the next 10 years are kind of common themes that we have. One of the things that has happened over the last 10 years is we've taken a lot more, we've looked much more carefully into the issue of sea level rise, climate change, in light of, we've had a very active storm season for maybe 5 years in a row. And so our plan really takes a look at what can we do as a county to become more resilient to the impacts of whether it's climate change or even just storm events.
Yeah, I noticed that within the 7 different categories in this plan, which included natural environment, economic, culture, economy, mobility, housing, facilities, and built environment, each one of those seemed to have an underlying theme of climate change and potential change within the environment.
Yeah, and so we really, one of the things we want to focus on is the more we know, the more information we can gather and understand the threats that we, the situation in the future, the better position we can be. And so a lot of our policies with respect to climate change work on information gathering. We're taking initiatives now to have more local tide data gathered. Right now we rely on information from Savannah and Charleston, looking at the impact on groundwater. So sort of knowing what the threat is and then being able to be in a better position to take action.
Have you quantified actual sea level rise here in Beaufort County?
Well, we've looked at models. There's different trajectories into the future based on, there's still a lot of unknowns about the how quickly sea level could change, but we've looked at that. And so what we've done is look at a planning horizon of 30 years, whether that's the life of a mortgage, or 60 years, whether that's the life of a public infrastructure investment, and then began to look at what decisions can we make now? Are we making decisions now that might not be sustainable in the next 30 or 50 years? And maybe we ought to make those decisions differently. Mm-hmm. And so that's kind of what the focus of that is. We really try, and I think that we try not to approach this in the scare. I think a lot of times the issue is addressed almost as a doomsday scenario, but we look at it as what do we currently experience in flooding, and what would it be like if that happened more frequently, and what steps would we need to take? And I think that that's a much more, I guess, a level way of looking at it to better prepare for the future, rather than having this doomsday message that sometimes can have the opposite effect.
Well, yeah, and that was one of the concerns that I had, is because if you take a look at globally, the sea level rise has only been about 8 inches over the last, since the 1880s. Admittedly, half of that was in the last probably 25 years. But if you react accordingly and you do something like change setbacks from 20 feet to 50 feet, which was done at some point in Beaufort County's history, that's a pretty major change to address something so minor, don't you think?
Well, but what we're seeing is the projections in the future. A linear projection from the past is the most conservative of them. Most of them are showing a more increasing rate of rise. And so that's what we're really trying to get a handle on, is that and what it means for the county, and then begin to make decisions. But to me, that's why the emphasis in the beginning is the information gathering. How much could we learn about this issue, and really how it affects Beaufort County, and then take the right actions, rather than, say, oh, we need to do this or that.
Okay.
The other interesting thing that we learned is that a lot of things that we're currently doing, if you looked at a climate change resilience toolbox, and we're doing a lot of those things already. We have a really good land preservation program. We have good stormwater standards or stormwater management standards. We do require buffers along our waterways. So all of those things are things that other communities are talking about. We're actually doing them. We've been doing them for a long
with the
time.
exception of this past week when McGarvey's Corner got flooded. I would say we've done a good job in Beaufort County, having spent some time in downtown Charleston in similar deluges where it's like up to your waist. And so you ought to be applauded for that. I want to talk about equity and this other concept that is called uniqueness to place, but we're going to break and then we'll hit those subjects in just a minute. Welcome back to Coastline. We are talking to Rob Merchant, who is the director of the Beaufort County Planning and Zoning Department, and we've been looking at the Beaufort County 2040 Comprehensive Plan.
Things like the Spanish Moss Trail, it is something that, people of all income levels can use and enjoy, and it really brings people together. And I see that as something that we would like to do more of in Beaufort County, is being able to provide more opportunities, for our residents to enjoy the county and thrive here. And so that's a...
Yeah, when you hear the word equity, sometimes you worry a little bit that there may be one upper economic group that may be funding the benefits of another economic group through higher taxes. But that's not what you're talking about here, is it?
Yeah, I think it's looking at all that we do as a county through a lens of, who is this benefiting, and just making sure that, a lot of it is also looking kind of at our actions and making sure that we aren't inadvertently disadvantaging one group over another. And so that just has become a theme. I think that this has been an issue that has always been part of Beaufort County, but now it's sort of, we realize that it's something that should, be something that we think about in all our actions and policies.
Okay. And then this uniqueness to place. I guess you're talking about the great low country life, right?
Yes. Well, we've been criticized in the past. We took a bold move, I would say, in the 90s when the county adopted its first comprehensive plan, and when we adopted at that time, our zoning and development standards ordinance. We really took a broad step to target certain areas of the county for more dense development and allow other parts of the county to remain rural. But we really didn't in that document say, what is the quality of those developments? We said where development should occur. And what this concept of uniqueness to place looks at is, not only where we grow, but how we want our future to be in our communities. And we have a lot of emphasis on where it makes sense to promote walkability, to promote, development that is consistent with our, kind of our historic character and, I guess kind of a broad term, low country. And
I
so
wrote
just
low country way of life.
Yeah, and so making sure that everything from how we build as a county when we're siting future facilities or when we're reviewing development, that we're looking at what kind of places we're creating.
And of course, we talked about the different sections of this plan, which include the natural environment, the culture, help me out here, what were the other ones that comprise this? Housing, and facilities and built environment. And I noticed that these weren't listed alphabetically. Was there a particular reason you put them in the order that you were? Did you see that natural environment was at the top of a hierarchy?
Well, yeah, I would say yes and no, because when you asked me that question, I was like, oh, wait a second, why are they in that order? But I think that when you look at planning for the county, it makes sense to start with those with the natural environment and looking at what areas you want to preserve, what areas really aren't appropriate for development. And a lot of times in the planning process, that's the first step. And so we start out with those types of qualities. In the middle there, we have the economy, affordable housing. It's it's kind of building on other aspects of development and planning in a county. And then when you get toward the end, it's sort of like all of these things kind of provide the background for the future land use plan, which is in that section about, I believe it's called
yeah, so there's this summation, or kind of what I called it was a management executive summary, if you will, but you actually call it, I wrote it down here somewhere, but anyway, let me bring it up here.
Unique to place or unique?
Yeah, unique to place.
Yeah.
But yeah, and of course,
yeah.
I think one of the things that we would all agree on is that the crown jewel of Beaufort County is probably our water. And that's one of the reasons that my wife and I moved here. It's another reason I'm sure many people retire here, is the beautiful water resources that are all around us that we want to preserve. And of course, you are faced with a bit of a challenge because you need to balance maintaining this pristine ecosystem with trying to maintain financial stability through economic development, and at the same time deal with the facts of life of Beaufort County, is that we are seeing an increasing income arrival of retirees, the ongoing tourism business. So you're kind of like one of these Chinese guys with the plates that are trying to juggle a lot of things, right?
Yeah, well, I guess that's one way of looking at it. We really see our natural environment, our quality of life, in a way, is an economic driver. And so recognizing that, places a lot more importance. It's not icing on the cake. It's really what draws people here. And so if we get to the point where you can no longer harvest oysters in our local waters or see shrimp boats or, the things that we take for granted now, those things may eventually start to erode, the attractiveness of this place. So that's something that, is something to keep in mind as we're planning. And I would say a lot of our efforts have been, how do we make that balance? And so part of it has been through really taking a careful look at stormwater runoff. That's a lot of effort has been put into that, and it's been a learning process where we had one way of thinking about it, cleaning up the water and then letting it drain into our marshes, and then all of a sudden we found out that just that large influx of fresh water, no matter how clean it was still stressing our our brackish water and the marine environments and the animals that live there. And so we had to rethink our whole approach to stormwater and allow more of it to be absorbed on site, rather than rushing into our waterways. So it's been a learning process, but all of that is meeting this goal of how can we continue to grow and protect the things that we value in the county.
And this has been an ongoing project for decades now in Beaufort County. I remember when we spoke about this probably 20, 30 years ago, we were talking about the introduction permeable surfaces for parking. And this was back when you did move that setback requirement from 20 to 50 feet, and that was in part because of different areas that might have septic systems that could essentially go into the waterways. So yeah, it's understandable that you are doing everything in your power to maintain this beauty of the Low Country. For our viewers, share what your take is on just how big a part agriculture and aquaculture are still here, because I noticed in the culture section of this, you wanted to maintain the Gullah Geechee community and their desire to continue farming and fishing. So tell our viewers exactly how much of that is still going on in Beaufort County.
Well, it is still going on more in the rural areas of the county, but we recognize that is, from the very beginning of history. I mean, we have survived on the land and the sea, being able to, be able to fish the local waters, shellfish, and then also, the ability to work the land. And that has been something that's sustained, even communities that have not had many other resources. They've been able to live off the land. And so we see that as something essential to, especially the rural areas of our county, to being able to preserve that opportunity. When you look at the rule of the county, that may mean making sure that zoning or you don't have regulatory barriers to, being able to farm property, providing public access to the water for people who wish to, get out on boats and do fishing. It may mean taking a more active role if it is helping a working waterfront, and I realize that things like that get a little more involved, but the county has a long-term lease with the oyster factory in Bluffton, which is kind of a way of being able to preserve someone who is actively involved in that industry.
Yeah. Well, we've got about a minute and a half left, and I wanted to touch on one last subject, because this is a lofty goal. You're trying to get some vehicles off the road, and so one of the areas you talk about is transportation and fostering more walking, more bicycling. Is this realistic in a society where everybody feels they're entitled to one car per adult?
Well, we look at it in a way as choices. Right now, for a lot of residents, you really don't have a choice other than to drive because things are too far away. But by introducing, whether it's a safe bike facility, then that opens up opportunities for people to think about another mode of transportation. So in my own personal life, I live in Port Royal. The Spanish Moss Trail, even once the first sections opened up the whole possibility for me to be able to bike to work, which is 5 miles away. I had no desire to go along Reboat Road, but once there was a safe facility, I would consider, and I would say there's a lot of residents who might make, maybe it's not commuting choices, but they might get out on the road more. They might run maybe one errand over the weekend. And, so having that as a choice, as a possibility, I think not only addresses the, traffic, but it also, it's a quality of life issue, and it benefits people in many
we
ways.
could talk about so much more. Rob Merchant, thank you so much. Rob Merchant is the Executive Director of the Beaufort County Planning and Zoning Department, and we appreciate his being here. We hope you'll join us for another edition of Coastline, and I think the next month we may be talking to Jared Fralix, who is the Assistant County Administrator of Engineering. We're going to be talking about airports and transportation and some of that stormwater that you were talking about. So we hope you'll join us for that edition of Coastline.